Hi, and welcome to Ask Your Inspector from Scott Home Inspection, a podcast about all things inspection related, including home inspections, energy services, and rental inspections. I'm here today with Chris Scott, and today we're going to answer a question about how to find your main water shutoff.
That's right. How you doing today, Joe?
Yeah, I'm doing very good. Good to see you again.
Yeah, good to be here. So, we're talking about main water shutoffs today, the holy grail of ending all issues with water leaks in your house, right? As a homeowner, you should absolutely know where this is. This is your lifeline if there's ever an issue. If you don't know exactly what's going on, just throw your water shutoff off immediately and then figure it out, Yes. It's as simple as that. But the main thing is you got to know where it is. I would say most people do. I would hope.
And it's something that, fingers crossed, you probably never have to use.
Right.
And if you have used it, you're probably using it one time in that kind of emergency crisis situation.
Right. Yeah. So we're just going to, there's a million different hiding spots that they put these in. Sometimes it's extremely easy to find. Sometimes it's not so simple. So we're just going to throw out a few tips as to what to find it. The first thing I want to say is that they basically just come in two formats in the United States. There's the gate valve and there's the ball valve, the lever valve, if you want to call it that as well. Is it a ball valve or is it
It's a ball valve.
Yeah, okay. So the gate valve and the ball valve. The gate valve looks like an old hose spigot. It's round, usually blue or green. You twist it circular motion and the rod pushes into the pipe, shuts the water off. The lever valve or the ball valve, that is more of a lever system. You physically pull it down. It's 2-inch lever usually, and that turns a little tunnel within the pipe sideways, and that way no water can pass through the pipe.
And I could say too that the superior shutoff is the ball valve. That's the one that is not going to leak. It's much newer. We get real apprehensive about operating any kind of a gate valve anywhere during a home inspection, because if that gate valve has not been operated in some time, there is a possibility that if you're the first person to touch that thing and start turning it, it's going to develop a little drip leak.
Yep. Sometimes you'll be the second to last person to touch it, right? Yeah. So whenever we see a gate valve as the main shutoff at our inspections, we typically recommend that it be replaced at some point in the future. It's not, necessarily something that needs to happen immediately, but it's a recommendation. To find the shutoff itself can be a little tricky. The main thing is to just kind of know how plumbing gets to your house, and it's one of two ways. You either are on city water and it's coming off of the street or the alley around your house from city utilities, or you're in the more rural area and it's coming from a well system in your house. Both of which have pretty telltale signs of where the shutoff will be. And so let's start with city water, since that's what 95% of or more of all houses in Colorado operate under. So city water, my suggestion is trace the water line. So most houses that are built, probably post 40s or 50s, the water will be coming off of the street in front of the house. So the water comes from the main city line to a water meter of some kind, and then into your house, or the water meter will be in the house, one of the two. Is that your understanding?
There are free locate services that you could use if if we're not able to identify where the main water shutoff is. Maybe it got framed into a wall and covered over with no access. There's no indication of exactly where on the property that line is coming in. I think it's 311 that you can call, and they will come out and locate all the utilities coming up to the house, and they will literally trace out with blue paint and flags where your water line is coming into the house. And from there, you can go into your home and go to find that foundation wall where it's coming in, and it will be in that location where that blue paint is marked out coming into the house.
Yep. So essentially, if the water's coming off the street in front of your house, then the water shutoff is most likely going to be on the lowest level of your home, whether that be a basement or a crawl space, on the same wall as the street.
Yeah.
So if that's the front of your house, it's probably going to be on the front wall of your basement or your crawl space. If it's a crawl space, that's pretty easy, right? You just go in your crawl space and you look around, look for a copper pipe coming out of the ground or some kind of pipe coming out of the ground with some sort of valve on it. And there you go. That's your main shutoff. A basement is where it gets a little more tricky because if you have a finished basement, there's likely some sort of cover. If it's an unfinished basement, you'll probably see it coming out of the concrete wall somewhere. But yeah, so look for items like panel covers, plastic panel covers that you can kind of slide, move over to show you a section behind the wall. You might have to pull some insulation back to see some of the stuff, but just look for those valves.
Yeah. And during the course of our home inspections, we're going to try to identify where this shutoff is, get a nice clean picture of its exact location, tell you what kind of valve that you have, just to make sure that you're getting as much information as possible that we can pull out of a house and then present it to you in the inspection report.
Yeah. So another tip I have on trying to find your shutoff is very often, if you have a sprinkler system, your shutoff valve is fairly close to your sprinkler shutoff. And your sprinkler shutoff, when it exits the house, usually runs right into what's called a backflow preventer. That's that little loop on the outside of your home where it looks like a little upside down bell, prevents water from coming back into the house for your sprinkler system. If you can see that on the outside of your house, there's a fairly good chance that if you go on the other side of the wall in the basement or the crawl space, that your shutoff is going to be pretty close to that as well.
Yeah, there would be a shutoff for the sprinkler system, and then very close to that, the main shutoff for all the water supply to the property.
Yep. Another wrench on this is, say your house is pretty old, 1900s, turn of the century type house, and there's an alley behind the home. There is a pretty good chance that the water supply is running down the alley instead of the street. A lot of sewer lines and also main water supply lines are running down the alley itself instead of the street. So in that case, you would want to look on the back side of your house and the foundation area, following all the same tips. But that you just need to know kind of where your water's coming from, or get a general idea.
It's good to note too that these shutoffs that we're talking about are installed for the homeowner to use, but there is a kind of master shutoff that is accessible by the city. That's often under like a 12-inch steel cap buried out in the yard. Sometimes you can see them, sometimes you can't. But if you're going to talk about replacing the main shutoff, how do you shut off the water that goes to the main shutoff? It's probably a water key out in the yard.
Yep. And very often it's labeled, it's a big, looks like a little, what do they call this?
Sewer cap?
Yeah, it looks like a big sewer cap or a storm drain thing, lid. And it'll say, city of whatever, utilities. And that'll often be where your water meter is as well, where the city measures how much water you're using. Let's talk about wells, because wells are a little different story.
You get into the mechanical room and all of a sudden there's what looks like water shutoffs everywhere.
Yeah. So because well systems have so many components, you want to be able to work on each. So there's a shutoff usually in between each section. So it can be kind of tricky. The main thing with wells is you need to find out where your pressure tank is. Most often, the well pump is going to be pumping water from the well into a pressure holding tank. And it's usually a big blue tank, 2 to 3 feet tall, probably, a 1.5 foot diameter or more. And that kind of holds the pressure of the water, so you have instant pressure when you turn on your faucet, and you don't have to have this delay where the pump needs to build up the pressure in the lines. So the water shutoff is typically right before the water enters that tank, because the pump is coming out of the ground. Shut the water off right before the tank. That is essentially your main. So if you can find that big blue tank, then you can typically find your shutoff.
Yeah, exactly.
The problem is the tank is always in a different location. So sometimes it's in the basement, sometimes it's, in some utility closet. Every once in a while, you'll see like a little hut built, a couple 100 feet from the house that houses all the well items. There's a lot of creative well solutions out there. So,
what do you think the possibility is that, someone's experiencing a water crisis in their house and they Google search how to find a water shutoff, and this is the video that they're watching while they're, ankle deep in water in their basement?
Pretty much zero.
Oh, okay.
But, well, I don't know. But you definitely should at least know this, especially when you're moving in to a home. I think that's the most important thing. So hopefully some of these tips help you out. And then you can put a little label on it, or tell your family where it is. I think that's important to educate your family as well. If you were gone and you were kind of the keeper of the utilities of the house, then you got to make sure your husband or your wife knows, your kids that are old enough to understand know. So if you're ever gone, they can handle the situation as well.
Yeah, agreed.
Cool. That about wraps it up. If you have questions, let us know. Leave a comment, drop a like, and subscribe. All right.